Hello.
Hello.
Hey, strangers.
You know what time it is, guys. It's time to welcome in our huddled masses from the dark. But they've waited an entire week for another episode of Always Strikes Last. Clearly, bright spots on the horizon.
Indeed. With finger guns.
Holster those. Holster.
Up. So, welcome everyone. Hit the like, subscribe, all this fun stuff. Blah 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 blah. Do the thing, do the stuff, so you don't have to hear us. Rocco will tell you later. But I'm Matt. We've got Alex and Jack, our co-hosts, on today, and today we have Ethan Melville. And he's going to tell us why we need to pull our head out of our butts sometimes and play games for fun instead of just fun. For winning.
Fun with a story.
Yes.
Yeah, always looking forward to talking about narrative, you guys.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are. You know, your experience in gaming a little bit. Tell us about Ethan.
All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, thank you guys for having me on. My name is Ethan Melville. I help run Pendleton Board Gaming. Pendleton, Oregon is in the eastern part of the state here. So we're a pretty small community compared to places like Portland, the I-5 corridor and everything here in the Pacific Northwest. So got started really with Warhammer back in about 2017, 2018, thanks to our local store. And it was actually a kind of narrative campaign that got myself and some kind of our core club members into, Age of Sigmar and interested in the hobby. And so after COVID kind of came and, the community obviously had to isolate during that, just like a lot of other communities did. We kind of isolated and were spread out and everything like that. And started hosting a narrative campaign to try to get us back together. And from there, that's kind of grown. We started holding pretty large 40K grand tournaments, which I help organize as well, just because like a lot of communities, 40K has a lot more interest in our area. And so trying to foster that while also on the Age of Sigmar side, trying to foster a narrative community, because that's really where our player base has kind of found their passion for the game. And so trying to facilitate opportunities for folks to come together and tell really cool stories has been my focus in the community since COVID's kind of died down and everything, and we're able to get together in person more consistently.
That's super rad. Community, I know, is one of the huge ways that I made it through the post-COVID. Oh my goodness, what is life? Leaned a lot on the AOS community for that, to be honest. So yeah, that's awesome. That's super awesome. Now that we're all talking about this, it's kind of hilarious because I know Rocco is going to hear this episode and be so sad that he isn't here because he loves narrative.
He loves narrative. Nova.
Yeah. So like, first off, what's your main AOS army? I feel like we need to get that.
Ooh.
Who's your dog?
Is it Alex? You play Alex.
He's wearing an orange shirt.
Just tons of Alex's, all monopose.
In terms of my favorite armies, oh gosh, I've been really torn recently between Soulblight Gravelords, and then I have a Blades of Corn army that I just finished and love, and so I've taken that to events. It's actually where I got to meet Alex in person for the first time, was at a GT in Spokane, and had a blast every second having my models on the table until they got kind of taken out my tournament records. Not the best, but had an absolute blast having my models on the table for a full weekend there at an event. Getting to go as a player was a blast. And so Blades of Corn have been kind of my go-to recently, and so have kind of a fun little head canon for my Corn demons and what their story is and everything like that. So kind of
just an award-winning
army.
Yeah. He's gonna his army is beautifully painted.
The ice bases, I think, are what did it, for sure.
Well, we definitely have to get some pictures of that in the Discord to make sure we can show that off to folks. So please drop
for sure.
I can do that. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the event that I won my golden ticket, Ethan came, and that's where we met for the first time. And I won Best General, and he won Best Painted.
Yeah, Corsair's really cleaned up.
Yeah. Nice. Of course, you guys are bound together by your mutual love of things that have an 8 in them, and corn and blood. Very nice.
So, to that being said, how are you feeling about the new book? Not to totally divert us, but that's kind of what we do.
So for me, I'm mostly playing on the demon side of things. So I have a lot of bloodletters. I have a single bloodthirster. I'm not sure how it'll work with kind of the lack of recursion and everything. I'm interested in the new mechanic for them with their crits and everything like that. I was able to fit more chaff in, I think, which is going to help. It'll help make it a little bit easier to set up more beneficial trades, which I think is one of my big issues. And then just getting in more playtime is going to be honestly my thing. Regardless of the book changes, I think I just need to get more reps in, honestly, to feel more comfortable with the army. So
Nice.
Well, that makes perfect sense, and definitely a sea change from blue deck control I used to have to all this cool new stuff.
yeah.
I mean, something you said earlier, kind of as we were talking about sort of like the community guys out there, and how it sort of developed into a narrative being the heart and home of it to keep people's interest and fires going. I think a big question I would have is just sort of how you balance it too. I mean, obviously you go to GTs, enjoy some competitive play, but it sounds like narrative is really where it's at for you guys. And do you build your armies from a story, or do you build to fit, the theme of an event? Do you like name characters and make conversions to suit it? Like, how do you really bring it alive? And what's your spirit like that you're trying to bring to the narrative approach when you're constructing these events? I think that's something that we're so focused all the time on competitive gaming. We go to a GT and that defines our experience, or an RTT, but the kind of events that Rocco has described in the past, I do have this feeling of foon. I think it's a Scandinavian word, sort of associated with them, but yeah.
I know I, for myself, don't necessarily lean into doing a whole lot of conversions. Just a skill that I have yet to really kind of dive into. And there's a lot of models in, the armies that I'm interested in playing, whether it's Old Blight or Blades of Corn, that I like to look at the models as is. And so I don't feel the need to change them. I do, for my Blades of Corn, I really tried to center the story around my Bloodmaster, Skull Taker, my infantry heroes, my foot heroes, telling stories around them. And so giving them names, motivations for my army's case, the kind of headcanon I have is that my Skull Taker and my Bloodmaster don't get along very well. And so on the table, when I'm playing more narrative games, I try to represent that kind of disdain for each other by keeping them away from each other. Because if they ever get too close, they are liable to maybe take a swing at each other and try to take the other one out so that they can be the only one left. Nice. So it's kind of a fun little extra thing that I'm trying to keep track of in my head of, if, these guys get too close together,
I love that.
Which can cause issues sometimes for their synergy and everything like that. But it's kind of a fun little, I like that idea of narrative having kind of, those kinds of consequences. I guess it's not all being about, this character's just so cool. And I like the idea of flaws of your characters kind of telling a story.
I love that.
Really cool. So like the new Scarbrand, you'll just like kill your own models.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just lashes out and swipes them, doesn't it? That's amazing.
Yeah, you used to see a lot of that in the older rules, like 2010 and before, like. To go back to 40K, like Karn the Betrayer used to just like murder guys near him. He would charge his own guys and fight them if there was nobody else to charge, right?
The Dreadnoughts could go crazy and kill your own stuff. Like,
the firing frenzy, right?
Yep. Yeah. And like stuff like that, I felt, provided so much more. How can I put this? Just variations to your games, right? Because you would be afraid of your own units, or you wouldn't necessarily know what your opponent was going to do. Because generally, any of those mechanics that had them like go insane on their own army were going to be 10 times worse for you if it went off on you, right? So, like, I did love that variation. Like, there was Doom Rider who just appeared randomly in the game and then disappeared, right? There was so much fun in a lot of that lore, even down to just like random, like random cannon hits and stuff like that where you use scattered dice. Now, obviously, we don't see that anymore. And because of that and the streamlining of the game, it feels so much more, I don't want to say like clinical, but like sterilized maybe. So I'm kind of like really interested to see like when you're running these narrative events, like what do you kind of inject in there, like to add that kind of like you're just talking about, like, no, you don't want these two characters together, right? Do you do that in like missions, or do you add special rules? Like, how do you create a narrative event that brings that kind of, this is not just my chess pieces, these are characterful things being pushed across the board almost by their own volition?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know some events, like Holy Wars and Holy Havoc events, have a tendency to really ramp up the rules on the table and the missions, where the tables themselves are almost like a third player that is actively trying to kill you. So there's a lot of potential threats from the environment itself on the tables. I've been a little cautious of trying to introduce a lot of environmentally like damaging effects, just because I know that can, feel bad if things like that are overtuned, and there's always a chance that can affect armies differently. Some armies might be more prone to suffering from certain effects like that and things. And so I still try to make sure that if there's a mechanic that's affecting an army, that it is as symmetrical as possible and still tuned down, where I try to help tell unique stories with our tables themselves. Is I set it up so that if, let's say, we have 32 players at an event, I know that means I need 16 tables, and I'll try to set it up so that each table has a specific battle plan and mission. And then it's got tournament organizer TO placed and kind of curated terrain. And so, so say, Alex and Jack, you guys are playing a match at our event. You're playing on a table that's totally different to what me and Matt are playing on, in terms of both its mechanics, the aesthetics, in terms of how it looks. And I try to curate that to match, the theme of your army and what you, as players, submitted to me about what your lists are and what your backstory is and everything like that. And so the more that you as a player engage with myself in the server that we kind of prepare for our event, in Discord and everything like that, writing quick little, it could even be just something as simple as, hey, here's the list that I'm planning to bring to the event. If you can do that a few months, before the event or kind of leading up to the event, I know what you're bringing, all the way to, you could do a full, multiple paragraph long kind of background and story and everything like that. So I know what your motivations are. I'll try to make sure that you're on tables that fit with what you're trying to achieve and, mechanically are interesting for both players and symmetrical, hopefully.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
One thing that one of the big reasons I wanted to bring you on is I know, like, right now, or I guess in general, we're a competitively focused podcast. Like, we love talking about, bettering your self-play, going to big tournaments, having fun. A big thing we're seeing right now, and it happens pretty much every summer, is we get, 3 to 5 books in the summer. We get a battle scroll update. We get an FAQ. For a newer player, that is incredibly overwhelming. I was like, I'm getting a lot from a lot of my newer friends who are getting ready to go their second or third GT. Like, Alex, what do I do against new FAQ? What do I do against new KO? I see it doing super good. What does an army of renowned corn do? I was like, shit, I don't know. Like, I'm struggling to keep up with this.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah. So with book bloat and stuff like that, and the stress, narrative events might be something that's super appealing for someone who's newer, wants to go have the fun, make new friends. We always say, 5 games, 5 friends, have a good time. So, like, what is that like for someone stepping into that versus like a competitive? Because you've done the super competitive tournaments and you've done the narrative events. So, how do you feel like the difference is?
That's a good question. I've noticed that for a lot of our folks who've kind of become regular attendees, our event was for a decent chunk of them their first large in-person event, ever. They maybe participated in local one days, but our event, I kind of label it as or advertise it as a grand narrative, so a 2-day narrative and everything for plenty of folks who've traveled out. And we do get folks that travel from the other side of Oregon, up from the Seattle area, so kind of across the Pacific Northwest. We have a group that's been coming out from Northern California, and so they make a 7-8 hour drive each year, which has been really awesome. And for all of them, I know that was their first That was our first large 2-day event, just because they were kind of in a part of California that just doesn't have those as an option. And so I try to keep that in mind, and try to strike a balance in terms of additional narrative rules that are being added, because the ultimate goal is that I'm adding enough things to keep things interesting for players who maybe have been doing the tournament circuit and have been playing the same, scenarios over and over again. I'm super stoked for this current season of Battle Plans. I think in terms of us narrative players, we're eating really good with match play right now. The plans, I feel like, are written in a way that
super cool.
They feel very narrative. I feel like you could tell a story with that mission pack, and you could theoretically do a narrative event with those match play missions and everything.
Yeah.
But I try to find a balance of adding new kind of material to keep experienced players, interested without also going too overboard. This year we did a naval themed event. So we had to homebrew rules for what do naval battles look like on an Age of Sigmar table. And so I think we were kind of right there at that kind of precipice of almost adding too much rules bloat, where if you're a new player, you're trying to figure out your army, and now all of a sudden these guys wrote a bunch of rules for using a boat. This doesn't seem what is going on here. So trying to really streamline things, but just also to try to keep things interesting and give experienced players a chance to play those scenarios that they don't do every day, whether it's kind of large multiplayer battles or again, naval battles. I'm not sure if any other narrative event has done full 2,000 point naval battles. I know Warcry really leans itself towards naval events, and I know a lot of narrative organizers have done naval themed events at smaller scales. I think that this might be a first this year that someone's done 2,000 point games.
What does that look like? Because I'm thinking like a Grey Seer takes control of a boat and is just going crazy, or like, is it like, my army's on this boat and then we're crashing into another one, and then like
they line up and the planks go down.
So they get like 500 points maximum on each boat or something, or
we utilize kind of the way that old KO functioned with kind of being garrisoned in the boats. And so the way I did it to try to help make sure that it was balanced, obviously some armies have a lot more higher model count than others. I think we had, and the other thing about our naval battles that was, again, kind of close to just being ridiculous, is those were 2v2 battles. I kind of had to do 2v2s for our naval battles to make sure that throughout our event, everybody got a chance to play in a naval battle. So it was just kind of feeding people through and getting them those games. I had it set that essentially you could have up to any number of models on the boat, but in the hero phase, you would declare which ones are kind of on your main deck. And then anything else was basically in reserve, kind of off the table, essentially, that could be set up in the movement phase. And there were islands that you could set your infantry units on. Monsters couldn't be in the boats, but they were kind of able to wade out into the water. So you could have a monster like Thankful, charging into a boat theoretically, or I had my Bloodthirster who was super looking to charge into a boat and hopefully not take too many cannonballs to the face, on his way in, nice. Things like that. And so where that really got ridiculous was I didn't realize until about a week or before the event, I was like, hang on, we have a lot of people playing squigs, and I think they have the fly keyword. So are they just going to be like skimming across the water? And I guess that's how it has to go. So our destruction players kind of avoided putting their squigs in the boats, and so they just kind of had squigs on the water all weekend, and that was really fun.
I mean, that just makes for a great storytelling moment, right? They're just kind of bouncing gassy squigs off the waves, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it Chicago where they
like
put
stones?
It's Chicago where they fill the river with the rubber ducks. It's like filled with squigs.
Yeah. So they're super, I'm sure they're buoyant. Yeah. And so it was fun. And people kind of approached that in different ways. Some armies that didn't have access to shooting loved the fact that the war scrolls we made for the ships had cannons. There were upgrades that you could take. And so some people took upgrades that made it better for their boats that were a little bit faster, maybe to charge into other boats. And so it ended up being interesting. It was slow. I know a lot of folks kind of wish they'd had more time than 3 hours to get those battles done. Most folks made it to about round 3 or round 4. But it seemed like it was really fun. Again, we were just kind of approaching that line of getting into a little ridiculous, getting a little out of hand.
So
that makes sense because you have to digest all the additional rules and sort of figure that out. And that's extra setup time, extra consideration, extra, what am I doing with this boat again? So I can see that.
So where do you find the inspiration for this? Like, I know for myself, I've tried to, because I'm desperately trying to enjoy the leftovers of what is 40K at the moment, right? So for my local 40K group, I've done like a small narrative thing where I just added old like 3rd edition, like Nightfire rule or Night Fight rules and all that to it. Like, where are you getting your inspiration for that? Do you just like pull from random books? Do you find like 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 1st edition rules and roll with them? Or like, how do you get that inspiration just in case like anybody wants to do this in their local area?
Yeah. In terms of kind of where I get the idea for our story, I always look first to the current, match playbook. I try to have the location of our events set, kind of wherever things are happening in the current GHB. So we kind of follow that. The first large in-person event I hosted then was right at the end of 3rd edition. So we were in Gur, if I'm remembering right.
I think so, yeah.
Yep. We were in Andor, I think. Yeah, we were in Andor for that. And so I used that and try to come up with a location that is somewhere in that area off to the side so that, we can kind of have our space to like kind of create this region and tell a story there that people feel like they're kind of close adjacent to what's going on in the match play and everything. In terms of rules and finding fun scenarios and everything like that, I have to give a huge shout out to Sean and the TC repository. That's the tabletop campaign repository. That's a website that's basically just dedicated to archiving different rule systems for 40K and Age of Sigmar and other game systems. And Sean does a really good job of staying connected to other narrative event organizers. And if you're, say, a narrative person and you come up with this book, event pack for your campaign or for an event, and you have like collection of rules that you're using and everything, you can get that uploaded there. And that way other event organizers can go through and search for those, and they can pick and choose what they like and kind of adopt, the mechanics that they like, and maybe skip something if they think it's not going to work best for them. And so Sean does a really good job of keeping that all essentially archived, that you can go back. And that's one thing I love about the narrative event community is there's been a lot of, really kind of well-known events that maybe aren't running anymore. Like Realms of War is a great example, but they've done a really good job of leaving breadcrumbs that if you're a new person trying to get something like that up and going, that you can kind of go back through the archives and find, whether it's old YouTube videos or kind of collections of rules. Yeah.
Oh, that's really
awesome.
Cool.
Yep.
Do you like do you consume any like media on it? Any like, are there any channels that you tend to watch that like help inspire as well? Or
I would say that the Narrative Event Organizer Network is a really great YouTube channel for that. They've got long, discussion videos on hosting events, specific coverage of different events in the past and everything like that. And I kind of, getting into this, it was interesting, just kind of searching up narrative events and seeing what I can find. One kind of weakness that us as a narrative community has that I've noticed is there doesn't seem to be near as much kind of coverage of the events that do happen. There are plenty of events that happen at the larger conventions and everything like that. If there are events that are happening that are not tied to a larger convention, like we have our 40K event that we host side by side, but we're not really a large convention or anything yet. We get in total about 120 people at our event in the weekend, which is pretty good for Eastern Oregon, I think.
That's a good size.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But the narrative organizers don't seem consistent in maybe recording those events, and getting, footage and coverage of those, other than the Narrative Event Organizer Network will do write-ups on their website about events, which is really awesome. But I think getting into, those spaces where people are consuming, Age of Sigmar content, which is, YouTube really, whether it's battle reports or kind of reports from different tournaments and stuff, I think that's a space we need to get into and try to promote ourselves better.
So for someone like myself, who I'm gonna out myself here, I buy a book. I kind of skip the narrative, the lore section a lot of the time. what is in it for someone like that? Like, what can I expect? Like, if I want to go hang out for a weekend, roll some dice, what am I going to get into it? Not knowing much about, what's going on in the Sigmar world.
You don't necessarily need to know, I would say, as much about your specific faction and everything. If you take a quick read through and you're like, I'm not really connecting, like I connect with the models, I connect with the mechanics and the rules of my army, but the story just doesn't really do it for me. You could headcanon, kind of your own story. You could have that be really centered around a single model that you try to maybe come up with, what their motivations are and why they're in charge, why the rest of this, collection of models kind of respects and follows them and everything. And then for our events, for our Pendleton Wargaming events, the reason that we really want you to engage with our event organizing team is that rather than doing battle tactics in the past, what we've done is instead try to homebrew. We call them bounties.
Cool.
Those are goals that your army has across the event that you're trying to achieve that sometimes are tied to the mechanics of your army. I think the ones that people enjoy the most aren't necessarily tied to like how battle tactics wants you to, engage in a certain mechanic in your army X number of times, or, it's
so
more
are these inner game, or are they throughout the whole event? Because I know sometimes like Old Town Throwdown, they do a bingo card of like really cool things you can get, and you get entered in like a lottery or raffle.
And that goes across the whole weekend, right? You have the whole weekend to get that done. Ours are kind of similar. Until the end of the event, you can achieve those different bounties and everything. And
cool.
They're essentially your secondaries for the event. And so an example of one that I think was a real success at this last event was a character and Overlords player who talked about a big kind of motivation for their backstory was doing kind of shady, kind of piratey kind of deals, and the captain having access to a special artifact that he's kind of got installed into a ship that in a pinch will let him kind of work between realms. That there's a lot of potential dangers involved in that, so he's very seldom in how he uses it. And so the way that we had him represent that on the table was I would have him come to me, and at certain battles, he needed to pick up one of his gun haulers and take it to another table to drop off, supplies. Or one of them, it was dropping off a crate of ale to another character player. And so he went and dropped that off to him. And then, what was really fun for that, since he was delivering a crate of ale, was that they waved over one of our drink servers and ordered them both a drink. And so that was kind of a fun. So he was trying to manage having this gun hauler going around and doing all these missions, while he was also trying to play his missions and everything like that, and adjusting for that gun hauler being off doing other things. So
I like it.
So if you're able to kind of come up with a backstory and a fun thing that your hero does or is trying to accomplish, we spend a good chunk of the last kind of 2 months or so before the event just focusing on getting those all brewed up for everybody. So
have you had competitive players come through and like
I was just about to ask that.
Playing these? Because I know I sit on a weird side. I love the narrative part of it. But it is like far too easy, like Alex said, to like just get stuck in like that competitive mindset of I got to build this list. It's got to function this way. I have no idea what the characters do. In all honesty, I'm barely looking at their names other than to be able to know what name fits what war scroll, yada, 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 right? Yep. You get to that like kind of place when you're thinking about lists and like what fits here, what does this, so the rest of my army is better and it's competitive, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, do you have players like that come in? Or sorry, Alex.
We have some players who engage primarily with the game in a competitive sense, whether it's just competing in kind of our local series of one-dayers. The Tri-Cities community, Big Brain Gaming, that's there in Tri-Cities, Washington, has a pretty good group of Age of Sigmar players, and we're close enough to them that we travel pretty regularly for their one-day events. And so RTTs is the main way they compete and play the game. So we have a player who that's kind of what he's used to playing, and I think the first event he participated in was bringing Soulblight, and this was kind of back when Death's Then Strove, so with hordes of zombies was pretty strong, pretty tough to deal with. Mm-hmm. And the way I handled that with that player is like, I love this. I think it's a super narrative list. And so just engaging with the game, you can bring a competitive, list and everything. My whole thing is just that you'll get the most as a player out of this event if you can take that list and really come up with, that the meat and potatoes kind of behind it, because to me, Necromancer and zombie spam is super narrative. That's try to tell that story. What's that Necromancer trying to accomplish, and how does he feel about all this chaff around him, and it's all a means to an end, but what's he trying to accomplish basically? And with Soulblight, that's a great opportunity to really get into coming up with whole personalities for your heroes. Vampires can have a whole lot of character, and so my whole thing is it's just you're kind of robbing yourself if you don't.
Doing it. Tell the story. That's big.
Yeah. We do give out prizes for generalship, and so the way that works is we go by wins, and then by secondary points essentially through those secondaries. So in order to get the maximum score in our event to win best general, you would have to play competitively and win your games. You'd have to kind of engage with the story and complete all those secondaries. We also award some points for showing up at least in one of your games or for a part of your game in a costume. The other part is we call it the lore master, where you're either engaging with your opponent and telling them your story, or kind of RPing with your opponent in the game and everything. And that's something that if you have an opponent that you do that with, they can kind of sign off their initials that this person met all that. So you can still be competitive, but if you're wanting your best chance of winning, you'll want to engage with all aspects of the hobby. So
if I show up, I need to play dwarves and just drink a lot like I normally do. Yep. And I'm always in character.
Well, and you need to walk on your knees though a little bit. Right?
Oh yeah, I guess I am tall.
Gotta walk on your knees.
I know my experience when I love after my games or stuff, just like going around and doing big rounds at like big events like LVO. We're always next to the Sigmar is always next to the 40K narrative stuff. Mm-hmm. At Tacoma Open, it's usually next to the 40K narrative stuff.
It was way on the other corner, but it was so nice to go and look at. I was like, this is how this game is supposed to be played. And then I went off to play Age of Sigmar.
I always wonder, because I look at some of those tables and stuff like that. And sometimes like, oh yeah, these guys, like the 40K stuff, it's like, oh, this is cool. Guy brought like custom Space Marine chapter. And it's just like, these are my 3 Space Marine rhinos. And then I have my tactical squads, my custom captain I made, some jump pack guys, and like this is my story of like my guys going on in this world. And then there'll be the guy who brings 4 greater brass scorpions. Yeah, it's just like, dude, what is your story here? Is your narrative you're just better than your opponent?
His narrative is he wins.
Yeah.
And it's Adeptus fuck you is what it is essentially.
You show up and you can sometimes you see it's like, okay, cool. You're playing Chaos Knights? Like how does this work? And I would think like, okay, cool. I'm bringing my cool narrative theme army minus 3rd edition, zombie spam with the Necromancer. But like, what if like I'm a Gargant player and I want to show up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my like gate crasher on this boat and then, or like next to the boat. And this is like what I play because I want to show up and have my fun time at this event. But like if I'm bringing like a more fun tailored narrative list, I probably am not going to be able to DPS check 4 Gargants or 3 Gargants. Like how do you deal with that?
What I really try to do is something that I'm able to do because it's a narrative event. I think I'm able to kind of get away with this a little bit better than if it was obviously in a competitive setting and everything. Yeah. People are going into this understanding that they're there to have a good time. I try to, for a couple of reasons, I try to curate those matchups. So I normally have, we do 4 rounds because what we've done the last few years is our last round is a big multiplayer, like a mega battle that normally takes up all of the day. So you still have your hour and a half lunch, kind of while on the 40K side, while they're sweating it out in the top tables, they're doing their round 4 and their 5. You're playing with the same folks, on your team next to you and across from the same folks. And, you're doing this big mega battle. Lunch hour hits, you guys can kind of shake hands, go grab a drink, go grab food together and everything like that and kind of take it easy. You're coming back to the same game. So for those 4 rounds, I try to have everything all curated for a couple of reasons. If you're playing Gargants and, I know, okay, well, in order for these games to be close, I'm not going to pair you with someone who's just going to bounce off of you and not do anything. And it's going to be not fun for anybody. I try to make sure that mechanically that the games are going to be close. Also that the stories make sense. If there's a player who comes to me and says, my character really is a KO player who really has like a disdain for Tzeentch, demons, a Tzeentch wizard, took out his whole, crew and he was the only one who survived. He's got a real, I'll try to make sure that there's a chance for those interactions to actually happen on the table. I'll maybe let that Tzeentch player know, hey, I matched you with this KO player because he's got a grudge against Tzeentch demons. So it's a chance for you to kind of play, the big baddie, and it's kind of like a redemption moment for him and everything, and see how that plays out on the table. And so that way you're going to give a good game. You're not going to sit there and think, oh, well, shoot, I feel bad for this guy. He can't do anything to my guard against. But you're also not going to get then paired into someone who's ready to just, take out all your all four models in one go, and and table
1, 2, 3 long lunch. Like, let's go. Like, game's over in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
I would have just said that giants can't swim.
It's more like they're waiting, like they're still touching the bottom, but they
that brings
just
up
give them a straw and they just kind of that's the model for the table.
they're just poking up.
Is there like a thing you do like that sometimes, where if there is like the army that maybe seems a bit weaker narratively, or maybe even isn't that weak narratively, but is kind of skewed towards I'm going to win this game, do you have like corrective rules or sort of like, I don't know, rules-based penalties for that to sort of help even the scales?
I try to avoid that just because I try to avoid in getting involved too directly in especially in on the fly, things like that. One kind of mechanic that we did this time around, I borrowed it from the Animosity campaigns, where they have you sign up for one of, I think, 4 different team factions. So you as a player are playing for your own score. And then there was a mechanic, at least for our event, where you were picking up doubloon tokens that we printed, so little coins on the tables that were going towards your team score. Mm-hmm. There were times where, let's say things are looking really rough. It's maybe round 3 and one player is, maybe over half their army's been taken out. It looks like if we kind of let things just keep going as is, maybe they'll get tabled. Maybe that player who's, doing really awesome and everything like that, us as a judge, maybe we come up to them and offer them a bribe, something that'll help impact their team score positively by giving them some extra doubloons. Every time. If they'll let, that player who's maybe, their models are doing pretty, rough. Maybe they're having a poor time with their rolls, or they're just, they're kind of to a point where they're going to get tabled, where maybe they can bring a unit back. Or we had some ogre mercenaries, maybe, they can accept some help from some mercenaries. And that way the player who's going to win is still going to win. It's just that they had a chance to let that player kind of let us throw them a lifeline, and while positively incentivizing, hey guys, look, I'm doing really good. I got extra coins for our team and everything like that. So, but trying not to get too directly involved in taking that result and flipping it the other way. Because if, you're doing really well and all of a sudden we intervened too much and now, well, what the heck, I just lost. Like that will actually affect your score, especially if you were going for that generalship. And that's something that I really try to avoid. So.
Have you ever had to tell someone their list is too good?
No, I just make sure that... You don't have to name
names.
No.
Cool. Just say a spot.
I have known of some players who, and we have a local actually who he's won the last 2 narrative events in terms of generalship. And so I just knew going into that, he's a good player. He plays really well and plays pretty good lists. And so I just made sure, and he knew going into it too, he helps kind of balance rules and everything like that. He stepped aside from this event actually this year, our friend Keith, and helped me just as a judge. Because he realized, hey, I've won this thing a couple of years in a row. I should take a step back and everything and just kind of help organize things. And I'm hoping he'll come back as a player, I think, instead of just kind of judging and everything like that too. But
I like it.
Making sure that they know basically, hey, I'll try to give you matchups lists that are a little more strong, or lists that, might have some more mechanics in there that are going to be tougher for you to overcome, to give you, more of a challenge. So.
I could see an amazing new category for a winner or something, or not a winner, but a returning winner, right? So like they would have to purposefully go out and create a story for a rabbled army of underdogs, right? Where like, let's say it's like, what's a good one? I don't know. Like, I don't want to say oops, all nobblers, because I for some reason think that would win every game.
We did have that at our first event, and that was a blast. That was really fun to see.
Like something like that, where it's like, okay, you've won. You've played the biggest and the baddest. Now it's time for you to try with the worstest and see if you can pull off the same.
That's really funny that you mentioned that. We had a player who brought, and it was his intention to bring in, and it was really fun. He brought all Noblars, and I think the story for that was his Ogre Tyrant. Really, he just hated his Noblars. He's like, I just got too many of these guys running around. And so his bounty was he needed to have a certain number of them die over the course of the event. He's trying to kind of thin the ring a little
amazing.
bit.
That's awesome. And I love the conversion side of narrative games as well. Like, I don't know if you've seen on the Discord, like I'm doing my own Goblin KO army where they all, they're part of the revolution, right? So going up against the horrible dwarven capitalists, as one does, and like the chance to actually feel that in a narrative game sounds like it for the people that put the amount of time into that conversion work, that lore building, the background, that sounds like a great way to actually get a different kind of joy out of the game in general. You know, there's always the five friends thing, right? You can make 5 friends in that too, but you can also be like, hey, now I have a new part to my story. I got punched off my boat, you know, like, and now he walks around and, you know, I don't know about you guys, but like when I was younger, I would modify my models after some games, just be like, oh yeah, you remember that one time, you know, the dude just totally punched him off his bike. Now he's forever on foot. He'll never trust that bike again. I love that stuff. I think that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, and for returning players and everything, that'd be really exciting to see and to have. Oh, I remember playing against this person last year, and their model did not look like that. Like maybe they killed one of my heroes and everything, and I see it looks like they added an extra skull to their base or anything like that. Getting the same community back year after year has been a blast because we've introduced new people pretty steadily. We had about 8 brand new folks at this last event. That meant that we had about 20 players who had been returning, which was really, really cool to see. And so my hope this time around for our event next year, I think we were talking, Matt, earlier, kind of asking about where the inspiration for our event ideas comes from. The naval idea came from our players last year. We were talking and someone said something about, oh, we got to do pirates. And so I was like, okay, bet. And then that turned into, well, hang on, let's really go with this. And so I've kind of leaned into and kind of accepted that we'll get inspiration from players kind of on the fly. And so for next year, that means someone brought up Wild West kind of themed,
I love it.
And so that's where we're going next year. And that was kind of just decided. The rumor mill it was funny hearing it around the event room. People were talking, oh, Wild West. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And so I already know what it is for next year. So, and I try to give folks enough time for those who are wanting to do conversions, plenty of time to make sure they can get their armies ready for that and everything. I'm excited to see in our Discord, people are already asking around about, hey, does anyone have any files for cowboy hats? Or, hey, how do you recommend working with green stuff? I'm seeing people doing green stuff hats for theirs. And so there's a lot of potential with that setting and everything like that too. And so it's going to be really, really fun.
I want to see a Gargan with assless chaps.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So the horrible thing about that, because I was actually trying to do that for Charles's conversion, is that they don't have an ass underneath there. So you have to completely green stuff everything.
That's so
now you know really a little bit of what's happening next, Charles, for your Slaneshi Gargan.
We can cake it up.
Know that guy
even better.
Yeah. You really get to know them.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like on that note, though, how do you have like a little bit more like lean into like not prize support, but like words are hard on a podcast for some reason. Categories of additional like hobby points. Like, do you have like multiple best model, best army, best
like what are the awards
like that
someone can get?
Thank you, Alex.
I think I think we should definitely look into expanding that. What we've done in the past is generalship 1st through 3rd. And then best painted, and that's been player choice this last year, or for this most recent event back in April. We had
the
paint
best
judging.
way to do it.
We had paint judging for first place this time, first and second, and then people's choice was for third. I think we'll go back to just people's choice first through third. I think it'd be good to expand maybe on some categories, best conversion and things like that, especially on the narrative side. And then I'm a huge proponent of sportsmanship. I know in a competitive setting, some people aren't a huge fan of the sportsmanship score.
It should be.
It's tough, there's some subjectivity to it, which I get. It can be hard to be kind of fair and consistent in how that gets decided and everything. But I really like, and I think it's really important in a narrative event to have someone be able to, really engage in the game in a way that, they can get recognized and rewarded as being, a good sportsman and everything. And so that's all done.
Rules disputes and stuff like that? Because I know a lot of times in like competitive tournaments, people get into that rules dispute. And if there's a sportsmanship score, it's just like, hey, listen, it's not against you.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to understand it so I know. I always try to sell it.
Right. Kind of playing that situation tactfully is good. I've never had any rules disputes where people are disputing that. I've had people be like, hang on, you wrote this on this battle plan. What the heck are you talking about here? And then I have to come there and we're trying to remember, what was the intent behind this? And then, and then it's really fun in a narrative sense. You kind of can hand wave it off and be like, just play it off whatever's narrative kind of thing. But no, I've only ever really had to come in there to be like double clarifying on what the intent was when I wrote things, adding context and, maybe clarifying on a typo, even that maybe that's the thing that's causing the confusion. 'Cause not perfect, having extra people if you are going to organize events. Again, I think of myself as kind of the big ideas person. I have people like my friend Keith that I was telling you about, who's very much not a rules lawyery type person, but who's someone who's just very keyed into the rules for both his armies and, kind of for the rules in general. And so as a person that I feel very comfortable sending him a mock-up of the plans and him being like, okay, I like the idea, but mechanically this doesn't make sense with the core rules, or we need to adjust this, or is really keyed into that. So having someone in your corner who can kind of rein you in and help you kind of visualize what things are going to look like on the table is really important, I think.
Question about that. You said something that was very triggering for me, or not triggering, but I understand. You said core rules. How do things like the double turn play into narrative events? Or is it you always stick with the I go, you go? Because I know sometimes we're like, I got the double, game's over in 20 minutes. Right. Long lunch, baby. Let's go.
What we did for this event was, and I've never, except I guess in the case of the mega battles, so big multiplayer battles, and for the naval battles, when we tried play testing the naval battles, we found that the double turn was just too much, and I'll only try to like adjust or like remove a core rule if I have to, or I can't think of any other solution, basically. What we did for the narrative event, similar to those bribes that I was able to do with the balloon tokens with the faction scores, if you rolled and got the option to take a double turn but didn't take it, you got a silver doubloon, which was like 3 points towards your faction score. Okay. So I tried to offer a positive incentive, which told some really fun. There was some fun storytelling in that, because some players played an army maybe mechanically or story wise. If they aren't as invested in the team, maybe they're a little more selfish. They can have that role play moment where it's like, well, I'm going to take the double turn because, I'm not really, looking out for the team all that much. Maybe I'm a pirate, but pirates can be selfish sometimes, or, things like that.
But in the mega battle, you kept the double turn?
I did. I removed the double turn for the mega battle.
Okay.
Just because you have 4 people sitting there waiting for 2 turns to go through.
You can have like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah. And like you're saying, it's like, I'll go take an extra, I'll go get 2 drinks now while I'm waiting, kind of thing.
I used to run back in 5th edition 40K when Apocalypse first came out, which is we'd have, I used to run a monthly game at my game store. We play a 24 foot by 12 foot table. And we do random pairings. So it was 4-on-4, 3,000 points. Everyone got like one of the cool like Apocalypse upgrades. Like one person could like outflank or whatever it was. But we found that these games are going to last 8 hours long. So what I did was I had a chess clock. So I was just like, you guys have an hour for your turn.
Yep.
And if that hour runs out and there's anything in combat, you have 5 minutes to resolve all combats, and then it's the next turn. So you actually got to play all 5 turns.
Yeah.
That's fine. It keeps things to a decent clip when you're doing that.
Do you guys do anything like that to like keep people on pace? Like, come on, guys. I know it's like casual-ish, and you're here to tell stories. Like,
people got to get through the game to tell that story for sure. Yeah. We didn't end up doing chess clocks for the mega battle. I had myself and another person who was kind of running around the tables, just constantly checking in, making sure people were on track. And we kind of had those goals where I think we were supposed to be into, or almost, I think halfway through round 3 by the time lunch came around and everything like that. That way people would play everything out through at the end there. I wasn't sure if, adding chess clocks or having the, what do you call those? The like
a timer,
my milestones, kind of deal. If that was just going to be more stressful for some folks than not. And so we were pretty lucky, I think, and didn't have any issues with it where I didn't need to enforce a chess clock or anything. I could definitely see that potentially being something that we would be prepared or want to be prepared to do. But
I don't know. We are very pro chess clock on this pod.
Yeah,
very, 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 very.
Regardless of what Mason says, I know he doesn't like it.
I want to do a larger scale battle like that, but almost do it like a D&D initiative roll. Like if you have 10 players per side, and then have like each of them roll initiative, re-roll right if you got somebody else's number, and then have them go at the initiative and just move through battle, have like some sort of reaction. Maybe you can have a pool of CP to spend from, right? So you could just be like, oh, it's happening over there. And here's my carrier pigeon that will give you a reaction CP or something, right? I love the idea. The idea of playing narrative games is so intriguing and so freeing, I think, to me. Like just talking about it's getting me bubbly. But like, I would love, I will have to make the next one that you guys do, because by then I will have my
only like a 6-hour drive for us, 7-hour drive,
7 or 8 maybe, I think. But like, I'll have my grots finished by then. My little communist grots. So like when all is said and done with it, if you were to like boil it down, between your experience of playing in a competitive tournament versus playing in one of your narrative tournaments, like what do you think? Obviously the storytelling is a huge aspect of it, but what is like the main thing that like you've walked away from a tournament? What's the main difference between those two?
I guess really, I feel like engaging with your opponent's story and feeling like you were a part of their story is a really fun thing, whether you impacted it positively or negatively. As long as you, like you were saying, we walk away with a friend who we told that story together, I think that makes that connection with that person that you played against. And this is like a silly philosophy. I think, I don't remember where I heard the term, but at our event, not calling the person your opponent, but your match partner. It's even silly things like that kind of rewire how you view that relationship with the person that you're going to be, stuck playing with for 3 hours and everything. And so it was your partner that you told a story with. And rather than, just it being, we made this, we had this good time and everything like that, but we told a story together. That's yours that, you can reminisce about it in the server afterwards, kind of talk about what does that mean for how our armies will react in the future when we get a chance to play again, and things like that is really fun. At our event, my hope is that if you really engage with kind of coming and bringing a story and everything like that, that you'll feel like us as the event team really took that and listened to it and connected with your army and with the story that you wanted to tell, and that you walk away feeling that you were heard and that, that we really engaged with that and helped you, tell that story that you wanted to. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh,
it's exactly 4 hours and 20 minutes away from us. So I bet we can get
4 hours and 20 minutes.
And it's all
we'll
freeway to get
one.
there. It's pretty easy driving. Eastern Oregon is not it's pretty. It's just, a lot of wheat fields. So it's kind of same old after a while. But then, yeah.
There is another silver lining about narrative play that I don't think any competitive player will ever run across. If you only do competitive GTs, you're never going to run into this. And the silver lining from that is that you don't walk away from the game blaming your dice on something. You blame that stupid character. You blame that character. And you set him in jail, and he sits there, and you take off one limb for some reason, right? And then he comes out later, right? It's never a dice roll. It's always Drecky Flint's problem. It was him. He was too drunk and fell off the boat. Mm-hmm. He didn't die. I love it.
Yeah. For me, it's Manfred. Manfred's always let me down.
Yeah. He went into the wrong.
Don't rely on him. Yeah.
No. I actually want to keep this in the lexicon. I feel like more competitive players should use this, but you said your matched partner?
Match partner. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's something that competitive players could take from as well, even, right?
Yeah.
There's something to be said about, like, we normally talk about the game as a conversation between two people where models and dice have to be involved. Mm-hmm. But like there are like, oh man, who am I going into next?
I think about that all the time. You can see me experience me doing that, freaking out 2 o'clock in the morning.
And
I think that's fun too. As someone, my background to Age of Sigmar and event organizing prior was the fighting game community. And so having that experience of taking a look at a bracket and it's the night before and seeing who am I going to get paired against, that can be really exciting. That can be really fun. It's, a tournament setting, I think in a lot of ways it's peak storytelling. There's, that tournament arc, kind of, storyline is so captivating to me. And I love the tension and the stakes involved in that and everything too. And so, but it can obviously bring with it potential, negative feelings and things like that too, obviously as well. So.
Well, I love the idea of changing the language. Changing the language, it does eventually bleed into your brain. I think that's something all competitive players could take.
100%.
Match partner. I'm going to start using that from now on.
I know. We've talked about this ad nauseum. One of the things that we're lucky to have here in the Pacific Northwest is such a tight knit community,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of us, I would say, I'm going to use the phrase trauma bonding over poor experiences, whether it was some toxic person, and I'm going to use the 40K community as an example, that just like, why am I doing this? What is going on? And we feel terrible from it. And we don't necessarily have to deal with that here because we police ourselves. Do you guys ever feel bad moments or anything? I can imagine that.
I think the only feel bad moments I've noticed have been more where maybe I, as a narrative of an event organizer, maybe didn't think a rule super through. There were some times where I wrote some bounties for folks as an example where I wasn't super keyed in. Maybe I wrote something that mechanically they were supposed to do this, and then I didn't realize, oh, well, hang on, that's not something that their army is capable of doing based off the list they submitted. And so coming up with adjustments on the fly, trying to reduce those feel bads, making sure that I'm working with everyone. There have been times like that where, again, still learning and could do better and kind of refine things each time and get better each time. I haven't really seen any feels bads with opponents like that. Nothing that was really lasting or anything like that, match partners at the event. So, I have to kind of rework that too.
Do you guys have a growing book of grudges for dwarf players that carries really on from year to year?
That'd be really fun. We have enough dwarf players. I think there were, between KO and cities and everything, we had 2 fire slayers, which is great. There was a lot of dwarf folks and I'm really curious to see how many chaos dwarfs show up next year with the Wild West theme. And so I think a community book of grudges would be kind of interesting like that. Yeah. All the dwarf players can add to it for dwarf players only. But yeah.
They've already got part of the hats already built, right? Mm-hmm. So they just have to do the brim.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, chaos dwarfs showing up and ruining the rodeo. That'd be kind of a fun story to tell. So,
yeah, pull the wings off one, and then you got a lasso on one of the characters. You've already got them riding a bull.
Yeah,
You already got your cowboy. I love that. That's so prone for conversion opportunities. So
yeah,
wonderful.
it has to. People have to be like building like specific centerpiece models, I imagine,
Mhm.
for every event, which is really cool.
We have someone who wants to bring Troggoths riding on top of Arachnaroks, and so it's like an Arachnarok rodeo kind of thing. And so people already, and it's fun, seeing that energy, people talking about ideas already and working on ideas, and so
I really like
I'm
that.
sold.
I like that it. One of the things that you see in competitive, and I know we're supposed to be talking about narrative, but I'm only showing the contrast here. One of the things that we talk about in competitive really is only like my list is this, how am I going to do that into that, no. And so sometimes there tends to be either how does this rule interaction happen in like your local Discord or whatever it is, and that's like the majority of the conversation, right? Or I've got this unit painted last minute just so I can get it in because of the rules changes. Wow, that's really awesome. But like the narrative community does something that competitive community can't really do as much, which is like, hey, we are all going towards the same goal together of having these themed armies for this next event, right?
Yeah.
I think that's super special. That's something that another thing the competitive community could learn from. But also, like,
I just got it. It clicked in my head.
We got finger guns.
Hear me out.
Told you we were going to get finger guns.
Corn AOR, Wild West themed, Hateful Eight.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It is the Corn number. It is the Corn characters, and they're Wild West.
That's perfection. That is perfection. And like going back to our last episode with the Corn Army of Renown, like there is a perfect way to do it to where it matters, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much more potential in narrative for having meaningful experiences outside of the game, and that's what I love about it the most. It's what intrigues me the most about it, I guess, is the best way to say it. Yeah.
I know. I always love going to events. They have the bingo cards, where it's just like I'll like purposely go down points sometimes. Like I gotta get this bingo. You give me a lottery or a bingo or anything, I'm that's my game right there. I get ultra competitive on that stuff. I love it.
Ultra competitive bingo,
dude. You haven't even lived.
No, apparently I haven't. I'm stuck in an almost life over here with my non-bingo.
So yeah, no, we've talked a lot about narrative actually, and we know the year events next year is Wild West theme. When is it? How do people sign up? And where do me and Matt book our hotels?
Yeah. So we have the date set. We've been working with Wild Horse Resort and Casino here in Pendleton. We're really lucky. So Pendleton, you think of us, it's like, hey, this is a small town in the middle of nowhere. How is it they're able to host these? Thanks to the Pendleton Roundup, we have a lot of hotel rooms and event spaces. And so ours is at the Rivers Event Center at Wild Horse, which is a casino that has its own hotels there. So you'll want to look up
On
Wild
theme.
Horse.
Nice.
Which is really fun. And so they normally give us a block of rooms for both our 40K and our AOS folks to sign up so you can be there at the same venue. That's going to be April 25th and 26th, I believe. And I do post those on Best Coast Pairings. I know there are a lot of other narrative events that don't choose to use BCP. And that might be another thing that kind of limits our visibility and everything. That's really where the community is at and searching for events. I think that for ease of use, for myself as a TO, I love that for getting those ticket, fees processed and everything. And again, for visibility, it's just that's where we're all looking for events. I think that's where we should move our events narrative wise to as well. Whether or not you use the event for a bracket or whatever, that's up to you, I think, which I do use that. But yeah, so
I didn't even think that would be an issue, because we find our events on BCP and Discords. I didn't even think about that.
Malarkey is another good one and everything as well. I just use BCP because that's kind of where it seems the community is at right now. Yeah. You could probably find narrative events on Malarkey as well. But yeah, April 25th, 26th is when we have the date set for that. You'll be able to check in that Friday night and everything when we do set up. I'm hoping to have the pages for both Squeak City Casino Royale, which is the 40K GT, which was a golden ticket event this year for if you do know anyone who you're trying to carpool with. on the comp side for 40K. If they're trying to get a golden ticket, they can come on down too. And then we'll have the AOS narrative side by side. And I'm hoping by either mid to end October to have those up. So
nice.
Love it.
And then once fall comes around, that's when I get started on all the terrain. And this printer behind me basically runs nonstop from fall all the way through till April.
I know we'll definitely have to have you post some pictures of everything, because
I could show you
that was amazing.
A little teaser real quick here, so I can get started printing. I have no clue mechanically how this is going to work. It might take a while to come up with it, but I do have some trains that I'm getting started on.
Oh yeah.
Again, we'll see how they look on the table when they're done and what they're going to do, but you can't have Wild West without trains. So
I know that I do have flying boats that are made to go and spear things. So it could be stuck, speared to a train, getting torn across every table.
An Apache, like an Apache Indian themed or like Blackfoot themed, like Dark Oath army would be kind of cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be great.
For folks who are interested, and maybe you're on the fence, if you've kind of listened to all this, and I totally get, again, in our area in the Pacific Northwest, we're very competitive focused scene, and it's really cool to have that. If you're on the fence, if you're not sure, I could get these guys linked to our Discord as well, and anyone can hang out, and you can even just kind of spectate the event from afar, from the Discord and everything. People post pictures during the event, and we always share all the story and the lead up to it. You can follow along the story that way. And that way, if you're in that Discord, it's basically really easy to stay kind of keyed into what's going on. And if you decide that you are able to make it and you want to join us, it's really easy then to find all the links to sign up there too. And can ask questions and all that stuff too. So I'll make sure that I can share the link with you guys as well. So
yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. Definitely check it out, everybody. It pays to take a break from trying to be the best. Just enjoy yourselves every once in a while, because that's when
sometimes
we're
we
the
get
best.
caught up. We remind ourselves it's a game. Who cares?
It's supposed to have fun with your match partner.
Yeah.
Aha. So I think we've gotten ourselves to a pretty good place, huh? This is anything else you wanna expand upon as far as the game itself, narrative events? Do you want to rag on? Do you want to rag on competitive people for a second? We can do that too.
No, never. It's not for me. I just want to kind of shout out the Narrative Event Organizer Network and Nunu, who kind of helps oversee that, and all the other narrative folks. We have a Facebook group for Neos, that we call ourselves, where we talk about events and everything. And it's just really cool to see at all the conventions that there's folks running narrative events and holding it down and continuing to tell their stories the way they want to tell them, which is awesome. So check out the Narrative Event Organizer website. There's articles on previous events, including ours, and just check out all the cool stuff that's been going on. Maybe, we can be links below. Maybe we can be better about being more visible, but, just check those out. Thank you again to Sean at the TC Repo and everything for keeping all those rules archived and having those breadcrumbs that you can go back and kind of go through the history of narrative, Age of Sigmar really, and kind of pick and choose the pieces that work best for you if you want to tell your own stories. So
love it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Thank you again, Ethan.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. I think it's time for last word. Do you think? There's this thing that we do.
We always do last word,
where we try to get the last word.
That's what we do for me.
Hello, everybody. It is Rocco, your boy, coming at you once again with another Always Strikes Last promo. That's right. Ring that bell. Leave a like, a subscribe. On whatever platform you're listening to us on, be it YouTube, be it Podbean, whatever you got these days, so you can keep up to date. Don't forget, we have the Patreon, if you want to, give us a thank you for all the stuff we put out. That gets you into our member-exclusive Discord. And if you want to be an even bigger supporter, we've got a merch store.